In this video, I'm going to show you how to make a simple diagram of the brachial plexus using the mnemonic device, remember to drink cold beer unless more mellow roasty ale. And so remember to drink cold beer stands for roots, trunks, divisions, cords, and branches of the brachial plexus. And so the roots are the ventral rami of spinal nerves that come together to form the brachial plexus. So we'll start by drawing in the vertebral bones as boxes in order to show the relative position of the vertebral bones. C4, C5, C6, C7, thoracic vertebrae 1, and we'll put in thoracic vertebrae number 2. Then I'm just going to make a little box around each of these, representing the bodies of the vertebrae. Now we'll draw in the roots. The first root is C5, and C5 extends out from just above the 5th cervical vertebrae. Next we have C6. So C5 and C6 will come together in order to form a trunk, what we call the superior trunk. So C5 and C6 form the superior trunk of the brachial plexus. Next we have C7, which will extend out all on its own in order to form the middle trunk of the brachial plexus. Then we'll have C8 coming together with T1 in order to form the inferior trunk of the brachial plexus. So this is T1 and C8 forming the inferior trunk of our brachial plexus. So we have our roots, and we have our trunks. Next comes the divisions. Now there are anterior and posterior divisions extending from each of the trunks in the brachial plexus. I'm going to use green in order to draw the posterior, and I will use red in order to draw the anterior divisions. And so the 3 posterior divisions are all going to come together in order to form what's known as the posterior cord of the brachial plexus. Then there are the anterior divisions. The anterior division from the superior trunk joins together with the anterior division from the middle trunk in order to form the lateral cord of the brachial plexus. And then the anterior division of the inferior trunk will extend out in order to form the medial cord of the brachial plexus. Last, we'll have our branches. The branches are the spinal nerves that travel through the arm. And the mnemonic device, unless more mellow, roasty ale, tells us the first letter of each of those nerves: ulnar, median, musculocutaneous, radial, and axillary. So I wrote unless more mellow in red to represent that the medial and lateral cords that form from the anterior divisions form the ulnar, median, and musculocutaneous. And so this labeling starts at the bottom, where we will draw in the ulnar nerve. So unless stands for ulnar nerve. The ulnar nerve is a branch of the medial cord of the brachial plexus, and it travels down the anterior of the arm on the medial side, and then down the medial side of the antebrachial region of the forearm. And the ulnar nerve will excite contraction of flexors of the wrist and fingers that are found on the medial side of the forearm. So those include flexor carpi ulnaris and flexor digitorum profundus, or the medial portion of flexor digitorum profundus. Next, we have the median nerve, which forms from a branch of the medial and lateral cord that come together, traveling down the anterior of the arm and down the anterior of the forearm. Right along the midline is the median nerve. The median nerve excites contraction of most of the muscles on the anterior of the forearm that flex the wrist and fingers. So that includes flexor carpi radialis, as well as flexor digitorum superficialis. So then we have the musculocutaneous nerve. It's a big word. Musculocutaneous. So the musculocutaneous nerve forms from a branch off of the lateral cord of the brachial plexus, and it extends down the anterior of the arm in order to excite the flexors of the elbow joint. So musculocutaneous nerve travels right in between biceps brachii and the brachialis, the two large muscles on the anterior of the arm that perform flexion of the elbow joint. So next we'll have the radial nerve, which forms as a branch from the posterior cord. So the radial nerve travels down the posterior of the arm, where it will excite the extensors of the elbow joint, the triceps brachii, then continues into the forearm on the posterior side And on the lateral region of the forearm near the radius, and the radial nerve will excite extensors of the wrist and fingers. For example, extensor carpi radialis and extensor digitorum are both muscles excited by the radial nerve. Then the axillary nerve forms from a branch of the posterior cord, and the axillary nerve branches off on the lateral side of the shoulder and travels in to excite the deltoid muscles and teres minor. And so I hope you'll enjoy drawing this diagram of the brachial plexus. It certainly helps me to organize the structure of the brachial plexus and remember which branches form from the lateral posterior and medial cords. And that helps me to remember that the ulnar, median, and musculocutaneous nerves are all traveling down the anterior of the arm, because these come from the anterior divisions, which form the lateral and medial cords. Then the medial cord gives rise to the ulnar nerve that travels down the medial side of the arm, and then the medial side of the forearm along the ulna. The median nerve travels along the midline on the anterior and forms from the two cords that form from the anterior divisions, the lateral and medial cord. And the musculocutaneous nerve forms from the lateral cord and travels down the anterior of the arm, whereas the divisions of the posterior cord will travel down the posterior of the arm.